Top 10 most famous scientific experiments that changed the world. From gravity to light to the building blocks of life itself, we're going on a wild ride through history, revisiting the groundbreaking experiments that transformed our understanding of the universe and our place in it. Imagine not knowing the basic building blocks of life. These experiments weren't just about proving theories. They were about pushing the boundaries of human knowledge and sparking new waves of scientific inquiry. Get ready to be amazed by the power of observation, experimentation, and the relentless pursuit of knowledge.
Chapter 1. Galileo's Gravity Drop. Our first stop takes us to the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy, where Galileo Galilei was about to make a big splash. Literally. Legend has it that Galileo dropped 2 spheres of different masses from the top of the tower. Now, common sense might tell you that the heavier object would fall faster, right? Well, Galileo was all about challenging common sense. He suspected that objects, regardless of their mass, would fall at the same rate. Picture this. 2 spheres, one heavy, one light, plummeting towards the Earth. They landed at the same time. Galileo's experiment, whether actually performed at the Leaning Tower or not, challenged the prevailing Aristotelian view, which had dominated scientific thought for centuries. By carefully observing and experimenting, Galileo revolutionized our understanding of gravity and paved the way for modern physics. Chapter 2. Newton's Colourful Light Show. Next up, we travel to England to meet Sir Isaac Newton, a man who knew how to shed some light on things literally. Newton was fascinated by the nature of light and colour. At the time, people believed that prisms themselves coloured light. Newton, being Newton, decided to dig deeper. In a darkened room, he took a prism and directed a beam of sunlight through it. And guess what he saw on the wall behind the prism? A beautiful spectrum of colours. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. All the colours of the rainbow bursting forth from a single beam of sunlight. This groundbreaking experiment proved that white light wasn't just one colour, but a mixture of all the colours of the rainbow. Newton's discovery revolutionized our understanding of optics and laid the foundation for modern technologies like spectroscopy, which allows us to analyze the composition of stars and planets.
Chapter 3. Cavendish's Earth-Weighing Act. Ever wondered how much the Earth weighs? No, me neither. Just kidding. How could we not be curious about such an interesting question? Well, in the late 18th century, a brilliant but eccentric English scientist named Henry Cavendish decided to find out. Cavendish built an ingenious contraption called a torsion balance. Imagine a super-sensitive seesaw that could be twisted by the tiniest of forces. This balance was so sensitive that it could detect the gravitational pull between 2 objects in a lab. By carefully measuring the tiny movements of the balance, Cavendish was able to calculate the gravitational constant, a fundamental value that allowed him to determine the mass of the Earth. Cavendish's experiment was hailed as a triumph of ingenuity and precision. His findings not only gave us a more accurate understanding of Earth's mass, but also provided crucial insights into the nature of gravity itself. Chapter 4. Young's Double Trouble with Light. Let's rewind to the early 19th century to meet Thomas Young, a man who made light behave in some pretty weird ways. Young's double slit experiment, one of the most elegant and mind-bending experiments ever conducted, challenged the prevailing notion that light was made up of tiny particles. Young shined a light through 2 closely spaced slits onto a screen behind them. Now, if light were made of particles, you'd expect to see 2 bright spots on the screen, right? But that's not what Young observed. Instead, he saw a pattern of bright and dark bands, known as interference fringes. This interference pattern could only be explained if light was behaving like a wave, spreading out from the slits and interacting with itself. Young's experiment revolutionized our understanding of the nature of light, establishing its wave-like properties and paving the way for the development of quantum mechanics. Chapter 5. Michaelson and Moleys ether fail. In the late 19th century, physicists were puzzled by a mysterious substance called the ether. They believed that this invisible, undetectable medium permeated all of space and served as the medium through which light waves traveled. Enter Albert Michaelson and Edward Morley, 2 American scientists determined to prove the existence of this elusive ether. They designed an experiment that was nothing short of ingenious. They built a device called an interferometer, which used mirrors to split a beam of light and then recombine it, creating an interference pattern. Michaelson and Morley reasoned that if the Earth was moving through the ether, the interference pattern would shift as the Earth moved with or against the flow of the ether. But here's the twist. No matter how many times they rotated their apparatus, they couldn't detect any change in the interference pattern. The Michaelson-Morley experiment was a turning point in the history of physics. Its failure to detect the ether shook the foundations of classical physics and paved the way for Albert Einstein's theory of special relativity, which completely changed our understanding of space-time and gravity.
Chapter 6. Millikan's Charged-Up Oil Drop. Our next stop takes us to the early 20th century and the laboratory of Robert Millikan, an American physicist who dared to measure the charge of a single electron. Now, electrons are incredibly tiny, so measuring their charge was no easy feat. Millikan's experiment involved suspending tiny charged oil droplets between two electrically charged plates. By carefully adjusting the voltage between the plates, he could control the movement of the droplets. Some droplets would rise, some would fall, and some would even hang suspended in mid-air. By analyzing the motion of these droplets, Millikan made a groundbreaking discovery. The charge of an electron was not only quantized, meaning it could only exist in discrete values, but he also measured that value with remarkable accuracy. Millikan's oil drop experiment provided crucial evidence for the existence of fundamental particles like the electron and revolutionized our understanding of electricity and atomic structure. In the early 20th century, Ernest Rutherford's gold foil experiment shook up our understanding of the atom. Scientists then saw the atom as a cloud of positive charge with electrons like plums in a pudding. Rutherford tested this by firing alpha particles at gold foil. Surprisingly, some particles deflected at large angles, even bouncing back. This led to the nuclear model, a dense nucleus with orbiting electrons, revolutionizing atomic theory.
Next, we venture into the fascinating world of animal behavior with Ivan Pavlov and his drooling dogs. Pavlov was studying digestion in dogs when he noticed something peculiar. Dogs naturally salivate when they see or smell food, right? But Pavlov observed that his dogs began to salivate even before they saw the food. For example, they would salivate when they heard the footsteps of the lab assistant who usually brought them their food. This observation led Pavlov to conduct a series of experiments that would revolutionize our understanding of learning and behavior. Pavlov paired the presentation of food, which is an unconditioned stimulus, with a neutral stimulus, such as the sound of a bell. After repeated pairings, the dogs learned to associate the sound of the bell with food and began to salivate in response to the bell alone. This became known as classical conditioning, a fundamental form of learning in which an organism learns to associate a neutral stimulus with a biologically significant stimulus, resulting in a conditioned response. Pavlov's experiments had a profound impact on our understanding of learning, behavior, and even human psychology.
Let's step into the garden with Gregor Mendel, a humble monk whose work with pea plants would blossom into the field of genetics. Mendel was fascinated by heredity, the passing of traits from one generation to the next. He noticed that certain traits in pea plants, such as flower color or seed shape, seemed to be inherited in predictable patterns. To investigate these patterns, Mendel carefully crossbred thousands of pea plants, meticulously recording the traits of each generation. Through his experiments, Mendel discovered the fundamental principles of inheritance, such as the concepts of dominant and recessive alleles, segregation, and independent assortment. Mendel's work laid the foundation for modern genetics, revolutionizing our understanding of heredity, variation, and the mechanisms of evolution. His discoveries have had a profound impact on fields such as medicine, agriculture, and biotechnology. Our final stop takes us to the heart of the cell, where two scientists were about to unravel the secrets of life itself. In the 1950s, the race was on to determine the structure of DNA, the molecule that carries genetic information from one generation to the next. James Watson and Francis Crick, two brilliant scientists working at the University of Cambridge, were determined to crack the code of life. Using a combination of X-ray diffraction data, model building, and a healthy dose of intuition, Watson and Crick pieced together the iconic double helix structure of DNA. They envisioned DNA as a twisted ladder, with the sugar-phosphate backbones forming the sides of the ladder and the nitrogenous bases forming the rungs. The pairing of the bases, adenine, A, with thymine, T, and guanine, G, with cytosine, C, provided a mechanism for DNA replication and explained how genetic information is stored and transmitted. The discovery of the double helix structure of DNA was a monumental achievement in the history of science. It revolutionized our understanding of genetics, molecular biology, and the very nature of life itself.
From Galileo's gravity-defying spheres to Watson and Crick's elegant double helix, these experiments have fundamentally changed our understanding of the universe and our place in it. Stay curious and keep exploring, Who knows what incredible breakthroughs await us in the years to come?